Welcome to our August virtual town hall. This is for UCCS faculty, staff, and students. We have more than 800 in attendance today, so thank you. This is our largest town hall to date. We've been hosting town halls monthly for faculty and staff. As we get close to the start of the semester, we wanted to invite our students to join us. So there are hundreds of students on the show today, so thank you guys for taking the time to learn a little more about our fall plans. So as long as this virtual town hall format continues to work, we'll continue to host these each month for you. So my name is Chris Valentine. I'm the Assistant Vice Chancellor of Marketing and Communications here at UCCS, and I'll be your moderator for today's town hall. Let me give you a brief overview of what we're going to do in the next hour. So we'll open with Chancellor Reddy. He has a few opening remarks to share with us. He'll be followed by Carlos Garcia, our Vice Chancellor of Student Affairs, who'll talk briefly about our return to campus efforts. We'll then hear from Stephanie Hannenberg, our Senior Executive Director of Health and Wellness, who's also a nurse practitioner, who will address some of the health guidelines on campus. Then we'll hear from Greg Williams, Director of Operations for OIT, with some IT updates. Then we'll introduce our panel. We'll have a few questions that have been pre-submitted, and then we'll be open for live questions. So the majority of our time today will be your live questions. So right at the bottom of your screen, there's a link for you to submit questions. So I encourage you to do that, and we'll do our best to get to as many as we can in the time allotted. So as I said, about an hour scheduled for this, so we'll dive right in here. So as always, ask for your patience with any technology challenges. We'll do our best to get back online if somebody falls off, but I appreciate your patience on that. So with that, let's get started. So I'd like to introduce Chancellor Reddy. Chancellor?
Thank you, Chris. Good morning. Thank you for joining us for our August virtual town hall. Believe it or not, we're just a few days away from the start of the fall semester. Let me start off by sharing some exciting news with you regarding our enrollments. Even if the number is negative, the news is positive. Our enrollments are down only 4.8%. Remember that just 2 months ago, we were down 22%, and our target was not to do worse than 15%, which is the national average. It took a campus-wide effort to make such phenomenal progress on our enrollments. So thank you to every one of you and those who are not even participating right now, who played a key part in it. This is very encouraging news. If this number holds, we may not have to bring any more financial hardships to the campus beyond what we already endured. We will have a more accurate sense of the enrollment numbers on the census date next month. In other great news, I want to share that just last Friday, we received a wonderful donation from the estate of Milton and Darlene Johnson. Milt was a pharmacist and Darlene was a teacher in District 11. They lived very frugal lives, but they made very wise investments. I'm extremely pleased to say that we have received $50,000 for general scholarship funds, and we expect the Hibble Center to receive around $400,000 in residual funds. Thank you, Milt and Darlene. This is a real testament to the positive impact that two people who love their community can make. Before I give the fall planning update, please allow me to thank the Board of Regents and President Mark Kennedy for their guidance and leadership during these trying times. I'm pleased to recognize the Board of Regents who are with us today. Regent Chair Glenn Gallegos, Vice Chair Leslie Smith, and Regents Irene Grego and Linda Shoemaker. We all very much appreciate your presence today. Thank you. Preparing for the fall return to campus was a huge effort from our faculty and staff. As I always said in every town hall, safety continues to be our top priority. If you have spent time on campus, you will have noticed that things look a little different, in a good way. We have put up signs all across campus about social distancing. Classroom seats are marked with green stickers to show students where they can safely sit. We are providing disinfectant wipes, gloves, and masks at locations throughout the campus. And we'll be providing reusable neck gaiters to faculty, staff, and students who will be spending time on campus. A distribution plan with more details will be announced next week. As a reminder, everyone who spends time on campus is asked to wear a face covering and maintain social distance, whether they are faculty, staff, students, or visitors to campus. Please also note that before you travel to campus for the first time, all faculty and staff members must complete the Return to Campus Skillsoft training. And every time that you're planning to spend time on campus, even if it's every day, you should complete your daily wellness check, which you can find at uccs.me/healthcheck. This is for your own safety and the safety of others. We're taking many other precautions to prioritize health and safety, but at the same time, we're giving ourselves plenty of flexibility. We're paying extremely close attention to the public health analytics on virus spread, and we'll work hard to choose the safest course for the university. As a reminder, we are currently planning to continue the planned in-person classes currently offered through the fall semester, including after Thanksgiving break. We recognize that in case of resurgence of the virus, it may be necessary for us to return to remote learning even before that. Hopefully, we may be able to remain on campus throughout the semester. No matter what, the spring semester has taught us that we are capable of moving our classes to remote on short notice. And thanks to our faculty and staff, we will be prepared to pivot to remote learning and working once again if necessary. I'd like to answer a question that I know is top of mind. How will we know if we need to go 100% remote again this fall? We're using 5 criteria, not in any particular order, that we'll consider to make that decision. The number of classes, the number of cases on campus, particularly if contact tracing indicates a community spread on campus, the number of cases in El Paso County and the rate at which they're increasing, testing capacity in El Paso County and on campus, the capacity of hospitals for treatment, federal, state, and CDHE public health orders. So all these will be taken into consideration. We've been paying very careful attention to these criteria all summer and will continue to do so this semester. I cannot say it enough. Your health and safety and the safety of every member in the Mountain Lion family is our highest priority. That is why we really intend to strictly enforce protocols such as wearing a face covering in public spaces and maintaining social distancing. But my hope is that we don't even have to do that, since we have a phenomenal sense of community here at UCCS. The protocols we have put in place for the virus suppression are just an extension of it. Protecting the pride, as we call it, is simply about valuing and respecting our entire community. It's about doing our part to keep each other healthy and safe. I'm personally practicing the 3 W's. I wear my mask, I wash my hands, and I watch my distance, because I care about the safety of our students, our faculty, our staff, and our community. Before I close, I want to express how grateful I am for the diligence and commitment for our campus community. Our faculty and staff have done a tremendous amount of work to make this return to campus possible. First and foremost, I want to recognize our essential personnel who, figuratively speaking, never left the campus. All summer and even this spring as we went remote, they were hard at work, making sure that we have as secure a workplace as possible to come back to. So thank you. Thank you also to our recovery teams, consisting of over 60 people across the campus. These teams have worked on all of the details and procedures that are making it possible for us to have an on-campus presence this semester. Thank you. Because of their efforts and the efforts of many across the campus, we have prepared as best as possible for a safe fall semester start. Also want to extend my appreciation to our shared governance leadership, faculty, staff, and students for their commitment to our students at an extraordinary time in the history of UCCS. I want to give a shout out to David, Alex, and Aiden for your leadership. Thank you. A special thanks to our outstanding faculty who've been making adaptations at a very difficult time to ensure that our students don't miss a beat in their progress towards their degree or certificate program. And of course, I want to say thank you to each and every Mountain Lion who makes up our community, who has been doing their part to keep UCCS moving forward, despite all the challenges we have faced. Thank you to all. And now I'd like to introduce Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs, Carlos Garcia, who will give some updates on the campus reopening. Carlos, take it away.
Thank you, Chancellor. In order to minimize the spread of COVID-19 and maximize the safety and well-being of our university community, we'll be limiting the amount of off-campus people at university-sponsored events. We will also not be holding off-campus sponsored events on the main campus. On Monday, a campus-wide message went out detailing the new guidelines. But in general, and with very few exceptions, we will not be allowing events that bring in off-campus people to the main campus. The West Campus and the downtown presence are not included in these new restrictions. Thus, this will not impact the downtown space, the Lane Center, the new Hibble building, cybersecurity building, and in part, the Yen Center for the Arts. Also, academic programs that bring in off-campus individuals that are sponsored by colleges, which offer academic credit, certifications, credentialing, badging, or CEUs for a specific discipline or profession are exempt from these new guidelines. Most events which have typically involved having off-campus people in person on campus will need to be held virtually. Student events involving off-campus speakers or presenters will also need to be held virtually, meaning the speaker or presenter cannot be in person on campus. Events that are primarily social in nature, like receptions and recognition events, will also not be permitted to occur on campus, though there may be some exceptions. It is also important to note that current El Paso County Department of Public Health regulations do not permit receptions or buffets to occur. Thus, our campus catering menus will be limited to individual servings. But some, but not all, of our food retail outlets will be open this fall, and service will be different than before. Our residential dining halls will be open, but service at these locations will also be different, and seating will be limited. Other retail outlets like the bookstore will be open, but will be enforcing social distancing, which will limit the amount of people who can be in the store at a time. The bookstore does offer online ordering and curbside pickup service for those of you who may not feel comfortable entering the store. The bookstore will also be delivering books for free to students living in the residence halls. On a different note, with the uncertainty of what local school districts will be doing this fall, we've heard that many of you with small children are concerned about childcare options. I want to remind you that we have the Family Development Center on campus that offers early care and learning programs for children ages 1 through 5. We opened the FDC this past Monday, and we currently have several openings in every age group. So I encourage you to check with our FDC director, Susan Debler, and to see if the FDC can be an option for you. Finally, I want you to know that everything we're doing regarding limiting events, though it may appear to be inconvenient, is being done to maximize your safe return to campus. It's being done to protect the pride. The COVID-19 landscape continues to change every day, and we are working hard to keep up with it. I will end by saying that I look forward to seeing many of you in person on campus within the next coming weeks. So thank you. I'd like to now turn it over to Stephanie Hannenberg, who will provide us with some health guidelines and updates. Stephanie?
Thank you, Carlos. So I was going to talk a little bit about the science behind wearing masks and social distancing and make sure that I clear up some misinformation I think some people have. So the reason it's so important for everybody to wear their face coverings when they're here is because you are protecting those around you. So the face coverings do not protect you necessarily personally unless you're wearing an N95 mask, but it prevents respiratory droplets from coming out and infecting those around you. So somebody who is symptomatic, pre-symptomatic, or even those that are asymptomatic may not realize that they're spreading those respiratory droplets. So having that face covering on will help prevent that. When the health department asks about contacts with somebody who's tested positive, they always ask about 2 days prior to symptom onset because we know you can spread the virus prior to getting symptoms. So that's why it's so important that even if you're feeling fine, that you wear those face coverings because you just never know whether or not you could be spreading that virus to others. In a recent study, we know that there was some information that came out about the gaiters. We had ordered all the gaiters that the Chancellor mentioned prior to that. I will tell you the CDC has mentioned all along that if you double and triple up your gaiters, that it actually provides a much thicker protection. So the bottom of the gaiter you can see is pretty thin. And then the top of the gaiter I have triple folded, and it actually is extremely thick, thicker than the face covering mask that I wear every day. So, and it still covers my neck. So unless the CDC or the state health department change the guidance and say we are not allowed to have gaiters that are worn, we will continue to accept these, but we do encourage in the instructions coming out with them, do encourage you to double and triple fold these to provide that extra protection. So please follow that guidance. The good news is, which we all need some good news in 2020, is that if you can't wear them, they make a very nice accessory. It will keep your neck warm this winter. You can wear it in your hair as a nice little accessory. So be thankful for this little gift, regardless of how we're going to be able to use it. So now I'm going to shift a little bit to testing. So testing is key to all of this, as I've mentioned before. I just want to reiterate why we're not doing mass testing. So the Centers for Disease Control, American College Health Association, and the Colorado Department of Higher Ed, as part of their guidance for opening institutions and schools, do not recommend mass testing. And the reason being that it only gives you that one point in time. Somebody can test positive 14 days after they were exposed to the virus. So if we tested everybody in one day, it'll give us a snapshot for that day, which is helpful, but it won't give us any information following that. The concern is that people get very comfortable if they think they're negative. They aren't as likely to social distance. They aren't as likely to wear their face coverings. So actually you run the risk of having more positive cases because people become too lax in their practices. And the other issue that we're having is that in our county, we have an extreme shortage of trying to get testing for those that are not symptomatic. To run these tests, you need reagents, and those for some areas are on back order. So we don't have any community providers that are actually able to do mass testing, even if we were to go against the guidance from the CDC and State Health Department, just because they're trying to really limit it to those people that meet all of the criteria and then have a rapid turnaround time for those test results, which is key to contact tracing and having everybody isolate. The other thing is, too, we need to remember that everybody should always be maintaining that 6-foot social distancing from each other, knowing that we can't test everybody and knowing that face coverings provide protection for others and not yourself as much. Having that 6-foot distancing is critical in order for us to maintain a healthy campus. The question has come up, when is it a good time to come to the Wellness Center or for community members, faculty, staff, and commuter students? When is it a good time if you wanted to see a community-based provider? I'll tell you that for anybody that's experiencing COVID-like symptoms such as a fever, cough, shortness of breath, difficulty breathing, new onset of loss of smell or taste, body ache, sore throat, vomiting, or diarrhea, we encourage you to seek attention, but the key initially is do not come to campus. Isolate yourself, stay away from campus. Even if you think you have a cold, until you know that that's what it is, we really need you to stay off campus, or if you're living on campus, stay in your residential hall room. We don't want anybody walking into the Wellness Center when they're ill. Normally we would welcome that, but right now we want everybody to call. We will do a telehealth appointment, we will triage, and we will set up for testing if needed. And we have a very set protocol that we will be following to keep everybody safe, especially since we're in with the recreation center. We really, really need to keep anybody that is not well out and bring them through our back entrance. Faculty, staff, we encourage you to talk to your primary care providers. There are a lot of community testing sites that individuals can go to. They just opened a new one this week to help enhance the capacity for what they can do. So encouraging you to get that guidance on whether or not you feel it's needed. But I will tell you, you should always call ahead of time. If you're going into an urgent care emergency room or your primary care provider, you have got to call them ahead of time to let them know you're worried about this so that they can be adequately prepared before you enter that facility to keep our community safe. And answering all those questions, I do believe that we will go ahead and turn it over to Greg. The one last thing I will say is until you've been cleared by a medical provider, we really do ask that you not come to campus. So until you've been given that clearance or you've met the criteria by the CDC for it being 10 days and you're asymptomatic, please refrain from coming to campus to keep all of the rest of the UCCS community well. Thanks, and I'll turn it over to you, Greg.
Thank you, Stephanie. Good morning. As you can see, I'm joining you from a classroom. I briefly have 2 topics to cover today. There have been some questions on what OIT is doing to support classroom technology for high flex. OIT has done several things in this area. First, we have turned on the webcam microphone. And as you can see, I'm actually using this technology right now from the podium, and we get a nice, we still have audio that is going back. We could go to the other side of the room, in fact, to show that experience for the remote students. Next, we have standardized and upgraded projectors across the campus to allow the experience for the remote users to see each other, the remote students. We've also added 10 high flex sound bars in some rooms across campus that allow the students to not only see each other, but the instructor as well. Fourth, since we have to social distance across the computer labs across campus, we have built out what we call Desktop Finder, which allows the students to log into a lab computer remotely. This also includes labs with specialized software. Finally, we have updated documentation on many of the other supporting software that is used for HyFlex, and we will continue to update that documentation. We also continue to work with faculty and the Faculty Technology Committee to build out additional technology throughout the semester as equipment becomes available. The other topic that I wanted to talk about was the health attestation app. You have seen and heard from Stephanie and the Chancellor regarding the health assessment that you need to take daily before you come to campus. Right now, that is a Qualtrics survey. We are building an application in conjunction with Denver and the Anschutz Medical Campus and have worked across the campus to develop this app. Each day, members of the campus community, whether that's employees or whether that is faculty or staff, as well as students, before they come to campus, should log into the app, and that's still going to be located at uccs.me/healthcheck to answer the questions that are posed to make sure that you come to campus safely. If you answer the questions attesting that you do not have the symptoms of COVID, you will receive an email that indicates that you can come to campus. This email is very visible and has the date on it, as well as a green background to indicate that you are cleared to come to campus. If you answer the attestation questions in such a way that indicates you may have the symptoms of or maybe have been exposed to COVID, you should follow the instructions on the email that is also sent out. It will provide you with further instructions, and also it will direct you to not come to campus. Faculty and staff may ask to see the attestation email in order to provide you with service or to attend class. The app will be updated weekly to comply with CDC guidelines and the El Paso County Health Department. This is one of the types of screenings that we are introducing to comply with Colorado public health orders. And regarding the privacy and security of this application, the information that you provide is secure and will not be shared with anyone other than the Health Center for students and HR for employees. Thank you.
Thanks, Greg, for that update on IT. So now we get into the fun part of the day where we get to answer some questions. So I encourage you to continue. If you have personal questions, drop them in the link there at the bottom of your screen, and we'll get to as many of those as we can. While you're doing that, we do have a few questions that were pre-submitted. So as you're writing your questions, we do have a great panel here. You've already met Chancellor Reddy, Carlos Garcia, Stephanie Hamburg, and Greg Williams. But in addition to those four folks, Chuck Litchfield, our Vice Chancellor of Administration and Finance, has joined us, as well as Provost Tom Christensen and Laura Alexander, our Assistant Vice Chancellor and Chief Human Resources Officer. So academic questions, facilities questions, HR questions, IT questions, we're ready for those. So as you're writing your questions there, let's take a minute or two and ask some pre-submitted questions that some folks submitted first. So Stephanie, the first couple questions are for you, because everyone is concerned about the health guidelines and all that. You did a great job of explaining the overview there, but a couple simple questions here. So question number one, what happens if a staff or faculty member who has been in contact with a student tests positive for COVID-19? Will students, faculty, staff who have been in contact with them be notified?
Thanks, Chris. So this goes, it doesn't matter who it is, whether it's faculty, staff, or student. If they have tested positive, The Wellness Center is monitoring and doing contact tracing for all of the students living on campus. In close partnership, we will also be working with the local health department who's doing that for our commuter students, faculty, and staff. We talk daily. And so as part of that, we decide who is deemed a close contact. Those people will receive notification about the need to quarantine and what that time period is and exactly what that entails. If others say they were in a classroom setting and we deem that there's any concern, we would send out an email. We will never identify who the person is, but we will send out information that says, hey, here's some symptoms to watch for. If you have any concerns whatsoever, please contact us. But a close contact will receive direct communication with very clear guidance on what they need to do.
Great. So this next question is for you, Stephanie, still kind of ties into that. So it says, will the campus have access to tests on hand in the event someone starts displaying symptoms of COVID?
Yeah, so the Wellness Center will have testing for our students. We currently have that in place. We are working right now with our local and state health department to run that testing for us, as well as we have another entity. We are just working on the timeline related to that. We're trying to find the locations that have the fastest turnaround time for us, as well as working with our partner agencies and some of the drive-through clinics for that. But we will have testing on campus. We are looking into rapid testing. We're not looking into it. We ordered the machine. They have been secured by a lot of the nursing homes, so we have a little bit of a delay in it getting here, but we have ordered one. So we will be able to get results in 15 minutes as soon as that machine arrives. So hopefully in the next few weeks. Faculty and staff, we encourage them. Some primary care provider offices offer testing there. Some will encourage them to go to a community drive-through site. So there's lots of options in our community. So we encourage them to work with their primary care provider on that.
Great updates. Last one for you, Stephanie, in this round at least. So some concern about students with disabilities who may not be able to wear their mask. That may hinder their learning experience because the virus. So what steps can we take for those students who are not able to wear a mask due to disability? What can we do to support those folks?
So number one, we need to make sure they've met with Disability Services Office because they'll need to get an accommodation. As part of that accommodation, the Wellness Centers provided their office with face shields. So anybody who meets the guidance to wear a face shield versus a face covering or face mask will be provided one of those with instructions so that they know that they need to clean it daily, just like a mask. Employees should work with HR if they need similar accommodations. And while the Centers for Disease Control does not recommend a face shield over a face mask, there are some situations where it is recommended, and this is one of those. The key, again, is it does not matter what is on your face as far as whether we have these gaiters tripled up, you have a mask, or you have this face shield. We have to practice that social distancing in addition to it in order to really be safe. So if there's any concern about safety, as long as we're following those practices, we will enhance the safety of our entire campus. But that face shield does provide protection. Our local health department has said that they think that there is adequate protection from that as well. They recommend the mask, but that it is a wonderful supplement for that.
Great update on masks there. So, Stephanie, I'll let you take a break here. The questions are coming in live fast and furious, but I have a couple other questions for some other leaders. So, Provost Christensen, question for you. So a student is asking, they're a theater major, and obviously a lot of their work is hands-on. So how will hands-on activities, whether it be engineering or nursing or theater, be handled on campus this fall?
Yeah, that's a very good question. Let me address it in the sense of theater, but then expand it as you did to other areas as well. There are a lot of areas that we traditionally have taught in a much more hands-on manner. Theater, dance are certainly very prominent examples of those where there is typically physical interaction between people who are in those disciplines. Our faculty have been giving that a lot of thought, trying to figure out how to still convey the important concepts and ideas that our students need to learn while in this social distancing environment. So you'll find that in some of the classrooms for dance or for theater that we have had to mark off social distancing areas. And the faculty have had to figure out new ways of trying to provide the same education. Same thing is true in advanced lab classes, in clinical environments. where people tend to be needing to be more than closer than 6 feet apart. So the faculty have been giving that a lot of thought. They've come up with some very creative solutions, and students will get to see some of that as they get into their classes this fall. So some of this is just, we have to do things differently than what we've done in the past, but that doesn't mean that we can't still do them well. And that's what our faculty have been focused on, how to still do them well.
Thanks, Tom. Yeah, great inspirational message there. We'll transition to Carlos. So Carlos, we have a question for you about a lot of the folks, student workers. So if the school has to shut down again, what are you going to do to assist students who work on campus that may lose their jobs or hours that they need to pay their bills? Obviously, this happened in the spring semester, and obviously we're concerned about it for the fall again. So some thoughts on that. Oh, Carlos, you're still on mute.
Sorry about that. I had muted my mic. But let me say first that it's never our desire to lay off students or any university employee for that matter. We do our best to preserve student employment. But if we have to pivot to a remote environment again, it is highly unlikely that we would be able to guarantee every student job throughout the end of the semester. Positions that can do their work remotely have a better chance of being retained than those who cannot. Those decisions will be influenced by what, if any, COVID-19 state or federal funding is provided to our campus. If a campus closure occurs, I would encourage you to meet with one of our financial aid counselors and discuss your options. But generally speaking, our decisions on student employment will be dependent on the financial situation at the time. Personal actions are some of the most difficult decisions that we as campus leaders have to make. But I can assure you that we do not make them lightly. We know that we're dealing with your livelihoods. So we do our best to impact that as least as possible. Thanks.
All right, thanks, Carlos. That's the last question for you. So we'll transition over to Chuck. Chuck, we have a couple of facilities questions here for you. So first question, will select buildings on campus be open? For example, the library, if someone wants to use an environment to work on assignments and all. So can you clarify for all of us a little bit about what's going to be open, what access will folks have to the campus?
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Chris. Yes, the library is open, and there will be at times certain modifications to the hours, but the library personnel have worked very hard over the summer to make sure that they can accommodate students who just need a quiet place to study or need access to a computer in order to be able to engage in some of their remote or high flex learning. All of those resources will be available, and we will keep the same type of public health restrictions that we have for the rest of campus in those areas. We will also have some of our normal public areas open, like parts of the UC. The bookstore is open, and students will be able to go and use those areas. Some of our auxiliary food service facilities will be open. Those service areas will be modified based on whatever the current guidance is with regard to whether we have to just do takeout food and how it will be served. But a lot of those areas on campus that our students who are returning are used to seeing will be opened. And I encourage people to check the websites for those individual areas to make sure that you get an update on what their operating hours are.
Thanks, Chuck. Transitioning, getting lots of questions about parking. So I'll let you address that one here, obviously. So they recognize that there are lots of options for employees and students and faculty for parking, but everyone acknowledges the challenge of the cost of parking with the pandemic and the remote work and remote studying and all that. So can you talk a little bit about parking and some of the options folks have to be most efficient with their dollars in these times?
Yeah, sure. So one of the things, so I'm going to reverse this a little bit and say that, one of the guidances that we put out to a lot of the supervisors was to consider staggered schedules to make as many of our employees work remotely as possible in order to de-densify the campus, right? We want to have as few people on campus as necessary to carry out operations and to facilitate learning. So in some ways, even though this is bad for parking revenue, my answer is we really don't want people to come to campus, without a purpose for being there. The second thing is that we encouraged all of our supervisors to work with our employees to make sure that as many of them that could be remote as needed to be. And it's also reasonable for an employee to talk to a supervisor if they are required to come to campus periodically, to match that up with the best match for them in terms of the 14 different parking options that are available on campus. It's also possible to use the daily lot if you think you're really going to be coming here infrequently. And we have the Park Mobile app, so you don't even have to get out and touch a kiosk or anything. So there are a lot of options for people to use to minimize the cost of parking when they realize that they're not going to be coming to campus quite as frequently.
All right, so we may get some more parking questions and live questions here, but that's top of everybody's mind. So. All right, so let's transition to some live questions. So I have dozens and dozens of questions who've come through. So I'm doing my best to kind of consolidate them into different topics there. So Chancellor, we want to start with you for the first one there. The person asking the question acknowledges that most K through 12 schools in the Pikes Peak region have moved remotely to start the school year. So the question is there any thought or discussion about delaying in-person services at UCCS?
So, Chris, at this point, we have done everything possible and watching everything very carefully how we planned the campus opening. So at this point, no, we're not planning on delaying. The one thing that we did delay is the athletics. So they will be delayed by a month. And we also made sure that we're not doing any high-risk sport. So you'll see that we're only going to do cross-country and golf. So that's an area we spend a lot of time, and the rest of the sports were postponed to spring, at least at this point. But in terms of the campus itself, I think we are offering classes in a variety of formats to suit the students. And we're also promoting good health practices, and we'll be watching very carefully and making decisions appropriately.
That's perfect, thanks. Chuck, the next question is for you. So with your CFO hat on, so the Chancellor mentioned earlier in his remarks that enrollment is doing much better than we had anticipated, which is great news at this point. But talk a little bit about the question is, will the furloughs be canceled since we're not as low as anticipated for enrollment?
Yeah, Chris, that's a good question. Just to rehash for everybody, we made some very difficult choices, and the leadership made some very difficult choices in June about how we would book our budget. We were very conservative. In fact, I recall the Chancellor at one of these town halls saying that he would rather be conservative now and not have to make more cuts in the fall. And right now, based on the way enrollment's going, it looks like that's the direction we're moving. And so the conversation that we can have after census is a good one. And that is, if we do better than the budget that we booked, what type of cuts might we relieve in order to facilitate the campus moving in a positive direction? There are a number of things that the leadership will need to consider. We are using reserves. We're using some college reserves, some campus reserves, and some reserves the regions have required us to keep. So that's one area we need to consider. The other area we need to consider is we implemented a position review committee where we've been restricting the number of positions that can be filled when they are empty. We have over 100 positions on campus right now that are being held open, awaiting the fall census. So that's another decision area for us. And then of course there are the furloughs, which, as we know, impacted everyone over 60,000 gross salary. And that not only has an impact on our productivity, but also has an impact on families and how they, how they meet their expenses and how they participate in our economy. So all of those areas will be under consideration after we get the fall census in and we have a real good sense of what our actual revenues are going to look like. And I can speak for myself and say that, the impact on our personnel and our ability to produce high quality education for our students is going to be top of mind. And so we will certainly consider that as a determining factor in how we relieve some of the cuts and some of the choices we made early in the summer.
Hey, Chris, if I just want to add on a little bit to what Chuck said, is also think about there could be unexpected things that could happen this fall. In case there is a resurgence, we may have to return the money for students. I think there are lots of options to consider here. but we are taking into consideration a lot of options and talking to a lot of people that have to be in this decision-making process. So this will not be taken lightly. I know, all of our intention is to lessen the burden, either by taking the furloughs off. But at the end of the day, if we don't keep the campus strong for the future, we'll all get hurt. So we recognize it, we'll take it into consideration seriously, and make the best decision possible for the campus.
That's great, thank you. Next question is for Provost Christensen. So, Tom, I personally remember in the last town hall, you rattled off the percentage of classes that were offered on campus versus remote. This question is asking the same thing. I know you probably have the numbers in front of you, but just in general, what is the percentage of classes being offered on campus? This person found out they only have one in-person class out of all their classes this fall. So, some thoughts around that?
Yeah, you're correct, Chris. I don't have the current numbers here right in front of me, but typically the way the numbers have been going is that about 40% of our classes, somewhere between 30 and 40%, will have some sort of on-campus component. Now that includes hybrid classes, where some class sessions will be held on campus, some class sessions will be held remote. So that's a typical number right now. It certainly does vary by discipline, and it certainly does vary by whether one is a graduate student or an undergraduate student, upper division or lower division. So there will be students who will find that many of their classes are offered online. There'll be other students that find that other classes will be available to them on campus. So it will be a fairly individualized experience in that sense.
That's great. Thanks for clarifying that. So perfect. Stephanie, I have a whole bunch of questions for you, but I'll try to summarize them. So the first, a number of people asking about quarantining. So this specific question is, will faculty and staff be required to take a COVID test prior to returning to campus if they've been out of the country or not quarantining for 14 days? Others have asked for out-of-state students coming in. So can you talk just briefly about our quarantining and pre-COVID testing for those who are coming from some high-risk areas, maybe?
Sure. So the guidance from the Centers for Disease Control no longer recommends quarantining for anyone, whether they're coming out of state or out of the country. And again, those high-risk hotspots can change frequently. What is asked is that everybody follow the other guidance we're giving. Wear your face coverings, keep your 6 feet. For move-in, we have a very set process so that only 1 or 2 students are moving into a building at a time. We only have 40 families coming like every hour and a half. For faculty and staff, if they've been traveling, they can come on campus, but they have to follow the same guidance. They have to wear their face coverings. They have to stay 6 feet. They need to monitor for any signs and symptoms of an illness. If they experience anything whatsoever, they need to stay off campus until they can seek that medical attention. So at this time, we are not quarantining anybody unless they meet the guidance. So there's isolation and there's quarantine. Isolation is if you are positive or you are symptomatic, you must stay home for 10 days unless you get tested and your test is negative and you become asymptomatic, then you can return. A quarantine is 14 days, and a quarantine is because you are exposed to a known positive case, you're considered a close contact. Even if you test, you cannot test out of a quarantine. You must stay off campus for 14 days. You need to stay home. It doesn't just mean off campus. A true quarantine means you are isolating, keeping to yourself for those 14 days, regardless of what any test says.
All right. Thanks. So Stephanie, keep your mic on here. So I'll combine a couple of the questions. So people asking more information about the face coverings. So one question is, are face coverings and social distancing required when walking outside between buildings? And the next question, I'll just pile it on there, is enforcement. So if you could talk about, Chancellor mentioned that, we hope there's no enforcement, everyone's going to kind of look out for each other, but talk briefly about the app and how that all works as well.
Sure. So as Greg had mentioned with the app and the daily screenings, a supervisor or an instructor can ask somebody to show them the green email for the day saying that they're cleared to come. And if they can't provide that, it's their discretion that they could send somebody home or ask them to take it on the spot. Ideally, it's going to take less than a minute, so they might as well just take it on the spot. They'll get the email and then they will be cleared as long as they can answer appropriately to the questions. When somebody is outside, under the Colorado Public Health Order, as long as you're maintaining your social distancing, you don't necessarily have to wear your face covering, although we do recommend it. Once campus starts to fill up with people again, it's going to be harder to maintain that social distancing outside of 6 feet. But if students wanted to go sit in the grass 6 feet apart and have a meal together, by all means they should. And that goes for faculty and staff. They just need to distance themselves. At any point, you really should not be within 6 feet of somebody unless it's somebody that's your close cohort. So somebody you're already living in a room with, it's a family member, whatever that might be. Outside of that, you really need to maintain it regardless of where you are. The enforcement of that is really going to start with education. Please put on your face covering. Please make sure you're social distancing. We did revise the code of conduct, though, so that if there's somebody that is refusing and it becomes a repeat issue, that there are means for us to have a further discussion around what that looks like. And then HR will be dealing with any employees that it becomes an ongoing issue for. But we know that people are going to forget sometimes. So we will start with reminders and just hope once people get in the habit, it just becomes a daily routine for them. It's just like going anywhere in Colorado Springs, put your face covering on. You can't go anywhere right now without it. So people just need to be in that habit anyway.
That's great advice. Thank you. Next question is for Carlos. Carlos, I saw this question come in when you're talking about the events rules. So I think this is a clarification for that. So it says, what does off-campus people mean? So this person is a grad student and lives away. Are they considered off-campus? So can you go back and define, we talked about community coming to campus events versus students events kind of thing. So clarify that for the audience.
Sure, and I hope my mic's on. An off-campus person is not a student. A student is a non-campus person, whether they live on campus or whether they live in the community. So a student, a grad student or undergraduate student that needs to come on campus for classes is permitted, obviously, to do that. Off-campus individuals will be folks who are not students, faculty, or staff, and want to have an event on campus, or we would normally invite them to be on campus for a specific event. Those are the events that we are restricting. On a typical year, we have quite a few people, thousands of people that come onto the campus to use our facilities for a variety of different reasons. And in this particular situation, this semester, we want to limit that so that we can keep our people here safe and also keep the community safe. We recognize that a lot of our students are commuters and are going to be interacting in the community regardless. And we can't control that. But where we can control is how many people come into the campus and potentially spread the virus. And we want to limit that. So if you're a student and live on campus, this does not apply to you. You are allowed to come on campus.
Thanks for clarifying, Carlos. And go ahead and leave your mic on. The next tie-in question is another event question. It says, what will Clyde's kickoff look like this year with social distancing? How's that event a little different?
Well, our Office of Student Life is planning that event right now. There will be some events that are held virtually. There will be some events that need to be held in person, but we'll be maintaining social distance and mask wearing. All those guidelines will be in place. For example, the concert that we typically would have on the West Lawn will be streamed. So students will be able to gather there with the restrictions. I mean, I believe no more than 175 people would be allowed to be on the West Lawn. And students will have to social distance, but the performers will be streamed. So there'll be, again, a different experience, but still an experience that hopefully will be memorable for our incoming freshmen.
Sounds great. Thank you. Next question for the Chancellor. So this question is simple. Have any decisions been made regarding December commencement?
Wow. So it's interesting you asked that question. Yeah, exactly. In today's morning cabinet meeting, that's exactly what we're talking about, that this is something we need to start discussing. Yes, we will be talking. And as I mentioned in my remarks, I hope that we can go through the whole semester because questions on Thanksgiving come as well. If we can continue that throughout the semester, we do hope. You can't believe how much we're missing seeing our students, faculty, and staff, and that's a celebration event. So it's a tough call even last year. So we will work really hard to make that commencement happen. But there's so many guidelines we need to follow, the state, the county, and based on all those, we will plan appropriately. It's not fair to invite a few students on social distance. So if we're not able to do that, we'll try to make your experience as best as possible in a virtual fashion.
Great. We'll be looking for updates there. Stephanie, back to you. I have a number of questions from viewers about mental health. So the question is, what mental health options will be available for students to utilize? And what can they do to manage stress? So just a minute or so, what tips do you have on mental health?
Sure. So the Wellness Center is back open. We opened on Monday for health and mental health. The majority of mental health and health appointments are going to be done through telehealth, but we do have in-person on the health side for preventative. On the mental health side, routine counseling will be done through telehealth, but crisis and emergencies will be done in person as needed. So those services will remain intact for the semester. Mental health, for those who know me, that's my huge passion, and I worry about that a lot with COVID. Especially our population, it can be very isolating. So any opportunity our students have to engage, whether it's virtually, whether it's in person safely, 6 feet, put your face covering on, but engaging, I think, is really important. Come over and use the recreation center. Physical fitness is key to helping with your health and your mental health. It's open. You can reserve a time. It will be very safe. They're going to disinfect the building. We will have activities going. We'll have classes. We'll have the Soul Center open. So everything that has been approved by the state and local health department, we will be offering. Go to these events during the Welcome Week and throughout the year whenever you can. Again, just please do so safely, but make sure you're engaging. And then I can't enforce this enough because this goes for faculty, staff, and students. Check in on your colleagues. Everybody is having a hard time. This isn't just about our students' mental health, it's about our mental health too. So really take care of each other, be patient, be flexible, because this changes literally every day. So be understanding and just support each other all around. And for faculty and staff, I would say, especially faculty, you could reach out to like Katie Gordon. She has a How of Happiness workbook. Incorporate some of those activities into your class every day to help with students and their mindfulness. There's lots of things we can help with if you reach out to us.
Stephanie, keep your mic on just for a second. Another question tied into that is, how does a student report if they have COVID symptoms and they were in class a day or two ago? How do they go about, who do they report that to? How do they discuss that with the right people?
So we would love for them to call the Wellness Center immediately, and we will gather all that information, and then we will work closely with the health department on our next steps, testing for them. That person needs to stay in isolation as soon as their symptoms begin, and then we will backtrack the 2 days before and collect all the information about any possible exposures, and then we will start the process once we get some test results in and contacting everybody that we might need to contact and work on things such as if we need to clean rooms, and anything else that needs to be done. But contacting Wellness Center is key.
Wellness Center is the key. Greg, believe it or not, we have some IT questions for you. So without getting too complicated for us non-IT folks, the question is, what is UCCS VPN and why did it replace the others?
So UCCS VPN allows you to your computer or device act as if it were on campus. So you'll get a campus address that you can use to access resources on campus, such as for students, it would be the Excelsior Drive. For faculty and staff, it would be the Columbia or Enterprise drives. And there are specific research computing or other computers on campus that you need to access. So when this all started back in March, we identified that we just didn't have enough resources on VPN, the servers that is, to maintain a good connection for everyone. So we have upgraded those so where we can have literally thousands of people on at the same time connected back into the network. So it changed, and it's a better service than what it was in the start of March.
Greg, keep your mic on there. So people are asking for the name or the link to the screening app and some timing clarification on when that'll be available and what they need to do the first week of classes.
Sure. So that is going to be the same exact URL that you're going to now for the assessment, which is uccs.me/healthcheck. We're just going to replace the back end where that goes. So the URL shortener, the uccs.me, will take you to the new application, and that will hopefully be rolled out within the next several days. We will make communications, though, saying that has switched over.
Perfect. We'll keep our eye out for that. We have a couple minutes to go here with a couple more questions. So Provost Christensen, the next one is for you from a faculty member. Stephanie may help you weigh into this one. It says, if I'm teaching a class in person on campus this semester, how far do I need to be away from students to be able to remove my face covering, face shield, or both? Some guidance or suggestions, 25 feet, what's the guidance on that one?
So at this point, we're certainly encouraging faculty to be wearing at least a face shield at all times. The mask is still the preferred method. Right now, the guidance that we're getting is that you can't remove that unless you're looking at a 25-foot distance, but that can be changing all the time. So right now, in most classroom environments, a faculty member should plan on wearing at least a face shield. And again, it's preferable to use a face mask, but we recognize that that does muffle the voice somewhat, so it can be difficult in a lecturing environment. But right now, to remove it would require a 25-foot distance, which will be difficult in most of our classrooms. Anything to add, Stephanie, or was that okay?
That's perfect as of today. It does change daily. It was 12 feet, so if there is some confusion, it did change to 25 with the new face covering order, which is why that is the distance now. But the health department did approve that face shields are still an acceptable way to teach class, which I think is very helpful for faculty.
All right. Two more questions. So Stephanie, the second to last one is for you. Chancellor, the last one I'll save for you. So you talked a minute ago about quarantining and all that. So what happens if a student tests positive who can't go home, quote, to quarantine? Will they stay in the residence hall room? Will there be a special facility for that? So a student with symptoms who's sick, what do they do?
Yep. So if they live on campus, we have reserved rooms for them. We have over 30 rooms reserved, single private rooms with their own bathroom, microwaves, fridges, ways for them in most of the rooms, hopefully to be able to open windows to help with the air circulation. But they are reserved. Meals will be delivered to them. Again, this is for any student that's currently living on campus. Obviously, if somebody's living off campus, I'm sure they have their own place that they can go to. But we do encourage people, if they can go home, it's very isolating to sit in a room by yourself for 10 or 14 days with no other contact. So if you're on campus and you are isolated or quarantined, I'm telling everybody, find other ways to be connected. FaceTime, attend as many things as you still can virtually, but we are reserving that space just in case. And as I said, there really won't be any need that they'll have to come out because everything will be delivered directly to them for that period.
All right. Thanks, Stephanie. So, Chancellor, last question is for you. Chuck may help you with this one. So is there any news on when departments and the university can resume hiring? So several of our areas are now severely understaffed and we're not adequately prepared for the start of the semester until we can fill some open positions. So some comments on staffing.
Well, as you know, just like we answered the budget question before, we are evaluating. In fact, the committee meets on a regular basis and they are proposing whom needs to be replaced. So I don't foresee new hires right away, but we're actually holding a lot of positions. So we want to clear those, at least the replacements to start with. So we'll continue to do that. And I'll ask Chuck to share anything specifics about the committee.
Well, the one modification that I would say to Chancellor's comment is that as soon as the decision was made to reopen campus and we started looking at which services were going to be provided, there were some areas where we had held positions that we are now releasing in order to man up those areas, person up those areas. And that includes things like custodial services. We just had a meeting yesterday where we approved hiring another custodian. But we are still holding a number of positions open, and we'll do so at least until census. And so the sacrifices that a lot of our essential employees have made and a lot of our critical employees that are now coming back to campus to serve as students have made, we recognize that. We know that it's been a burden to ask them to do that when their staffs are already short. But it's been a necessary balancing act to make sure that we're prepared to weather any of the financial exigencies that come from this COVID environment while still trying to meet our primary mission.
And I would just add to that, Chris, it's not like we won't hire new positions, but they will be very well vetted. For example, you can't not hire a dean. For example, we wouldn't have 2 new deans this year if we did that. So it'll be very, very thoughtful and focused, and absolutely essential that we do it.
That's great. So we're getting close to the top of the hour here. So I'd like to turn it back over to Chancellor Reddy to offer a few closing remarks.
First of all, I want to thank all the panel members. And I wanted to let you know, please know that even as we focus on fall opening, we have not lost sight on important strategic issues affecting the campus, such as diversity, equity, and inclusion, online programs, cybersecurity, arts, and health and wellness, among others. As I close this town hall, let me first thank all the students who are with us today for participating in this town hall today. I recognize this is not the experience you envisioned last year this time, but please know you have come to a very caring community of faculty and staff. Please consider them as your invisible guardians as we go through this process. You're not alone in this. Provost Christensen and I are looking forward to speaking to you more at the convocation next week. Just remember that your safety is our top priority. And also know that cabinet members, deans, and administrators across the campus are keeping a close eye on these continuously evolving changes and taking appropriate action to keep our campus strong. So I want to thank them. Also want to take this opportunity to thank and wish our faculty and staff the very best as the fall semester is about to kick off. I know this isolation is not helping anyone. Like Stephanie said, let's figure out new ways of keeping in touch and taking care of each other. It's our collective effort that makes a return to campus and a fall semester possible. We all have a part to play in keeping our community healthy. I know some of the new protocols may frustrate you, but I want to ask you personally, and I hope that as we all practice patience, caring, and compassion this semester, don't forget to keep a good sense of humor about things. If someone reminds you to put your mask on or face covering on or maintain a social distance while you're on campus, please say thank you and maybe even offer to buy them a socially distanced coffee. So I'll close by saying I'm proud of the patience, compassion, and courage our faculty, staff, and students have shown throughout this planning process. And I take a lot of pride serving you, and I'm a really very proud Mountain Lion. Thank you so much.
Well, that concludes our town hall for today. Thank you everyone for joining us, and we'll see you next month.